What's going on, JP Football Fanatics fans? It's your boy JP here, back with you once again with what I've been doing all of last season, which is going to be about the Week 1 NFL. Excuse me. Sorry, I was trying to test out my mic here a little bit. It kind of got unplugged with me a little bit, so I know you can hear me through my defaulted microphone through my computer, but I always like to use the microphone so that way everybody can kind of hear me in a way. So, yep. So here we go once again, everybody. Welcome back to JP Football Fanatics. Hope everybody had a nice weekend. Hope everybody was able to join in on the football action in Week 1. Maybe not just for the NFL, but for college as well. That started a week ago. So anytime you get a chance to watch some good football is always an honor. So the NFL season kicked off as of last Thursday with the Kansas City Chiefs game and the Detroit Lions game in Kansas City, which we'll get to talk about that game in this particular recap. We'll also talk about a couple of other games too that really stood out within this week. Now, I know last year was kind of like the year where I kind of went more really a lot of depth into each and every single game, which I'm going to try and limit myself this year to not really go on a tangent on each and every single game. Yeah, there were some games that I think that were important to really talk about for this particular week. But I'm also going to try my very absolute best and try not to go over them like so in depth because I want to be able to finish this within like an hour 15. I want to kind of give myself some time and give you guys some time too to really be able to analyze and really soak in as far as how week 1 did. So not every single game is going to be talked about. I'll be honest with you. I've been kind of busy this past weekend with a lot of different things that were kind of going on, but I was able to catch up on some of the highlights. I was able to watch a couple of good games, especially last night's game. If you haven't seen my Facebook already, which was a interesting way to how the game started and how the game ended. So we'll talk about that game, the Bills Jets game, in a second. We'll talk about that as like the last segment for tonight. But there were some good games this weekend. Not anything great or spectacular, but there were some good games that were either close or there were games that were very ugly, which is AKA the Cowboys Giants game or if you were if you're a Pittsburgh fan, the Steelers and 49ers game was also a very ugly one too for anybody that's a Steelers fan. Maybe not so much a 49ers fan, but yeah, there were quite a few blowouts that happened this weekend, which nobody was expecting. But then there were a couple of really close games too that I feel like that are worth mentioning and really talking about. So let me know what you all think. Let me know in the comments down below what you thought of this week. Did you think this was a good week 1 recap? Do you think this was a good week for football? Do you think your favorite team played really well? Let me know in the comments down below. Before we get started, please be sure to drop a like on this video if you have not done so already. And please be sure to also hit that subscribe button as well, so that way you can be in contact on anything that I share on my YouTube page. So, like, comment, subscribe. Let me know what you all think. So, without a further ado, everybody, we're going to get ourselves started. So, similar to what we did last year, so instead of like me going into like my top 10 and game of the week and everything like that, I feel like that I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna do that tomorrow night. Like I'm gonna go over the how I did with my picks tomorrow night, and I'll also give you like my top 10 teams for this past week because I feel like when I try to do them all at once in like a recap video, it kind of messes things up. It kind of wastes a lot of time. So I kind of want to try to reduce as much time as possible, but give you good enough information about each of the games that I kind of want to cover in tonight's recap video. So, again, thank you so much for tuning in. Always means a lot. I always appreciate good feedback. And let's go ahead and let's get started with the week 1 recap. There were quite a few games that were on this weekend that were kind of worth mentioning, and I want to try to get into them. So we'll go ahead. We'll get started. As you can see, the background, which I also used as my thumbnail this week, is a picture of Tyreek Hill at the Chargers game, which Tyreek Hill, we'll talk about that game when we get to it. Had over 200 yards of receiving this weekend, and he also caught 2 touchdowns as well. So if you had Tyreek Hill on your fantasy team this week, you're one lucky duck, that's for sure. So Congrats to Tyreek Hill for that one. Um, let's go ahead and let's get started. So we'll start off with the first game, the Thursday night game here, and that was the Detroit Lions at the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, I know the Chiefs were missing some players. There's no question about it. Travis Kelsey was out on injury, who could be out again this week. And the Chiefs also were missing a very important piece to the defense, and that was Chris Jones, their defensive lineman. So they were definitely missing some pieces for this particular team. And when I was watching this particular game, I'll be honest with you, I really didn't watch the full entire game. I probably watched until like maybe halfway through the third quarter because I was feeling very tired that night, and I also work during the week too, and so I have to get up earlier and get some rest in because I do get up earlier in the morning to get to work, and I travel a little bit to get to work in the morning. So I wasn't able to catch on to the whole game except for when, when they caught, like, I guess when they kicked that one field goal. It was honestly a pretty boring game. I'm not going to lie to you. It wasn't really the most entertaining game. I think the only play that I personally really caught my attention was more of Patrick Mahomes throwing a pick six. I thought that was probably the most exciting play of the entire game. So Patrick Mahomes, he looked very lost, and I think without your best guy in Travis Kelsey, you were supposed to have someone that would step up and be that person that's going to be able to cover and be able to stand up to the par of what Travis Kelsey is. And none of the receivers, including Kadarius Toney, which ended up being a meme all over Facebook, did not really work out to their favor. So I really thought that, in my opinion, this particular game, even if Travis Kelsey would have played in this game, I thought Detroit came up with a phenomenal defensive game that I probably have ever seen Detroit in all the years that I've been watching football. I thought their defense kept Mahomes contained. I think they did a phenomenal job keeping him from doing his big scrambles, making the big plays. I thought they did a great job with forcing him to throw in the pocket. Now, this might be a very hot take for a lot of people, but I know Mahomes is the number one quarterback. I probably would rank him at number one as well. Um, but you have to admit, Patrick Mahomes really isn't a clean pocket passer of a quarterback. So that's kind of why when you have like these defenses that don't blitz necessarily but put some pressure on Mahomes, or not really get even like don't even blitz Patrick Mahomes, he spends a lot of time with trying to find like the guy that is wide open. And that's when you kind of see more of Mahomes uh, finding him to have mistakes in his game. So like when he doesn't get a lot of pressure in you, that's kind of where Mahomes kind of plays his worst football. And I felt that Detroit really didn't have to put a lot of pressure on him to keep him contained. I think they did a good job with playing man coverage. They knew exactly what they had to do, how to cover the receivers, because they knew that they were going to be missing a piece of Travis Kelsey, and Mahomes would look absolutely lost. Now, the offensive side for the Lions, I think Jared Goff actually played a pretty good game. I wouldn't say he played a phenomenal game. I wouldn't say he played the best game of his career. I wouldn't say this is the best game of the year because it's only week one. But I thought he played a pretty good game. I thought that Ben Johnson came up with a pretty conservative play calling for Jared Goff that worked very well for him. I was a little suspect in the beginning of the offensive line. I wasn't exactly sure how this offensive line was going to hold up throughout the entire game after seeing like the first drive that was a very quick 3-and-out for them. But they were able to adjust. They were able to take advantage, and Ben Johnson adjusted to the offense. He made some changes. He made some things look better for Jared Goff and company, and that's what helped them really get this win. They did some very conservative play calling that kept Jared Goff on the field, and when you do that, and you try to drain the clock and do the short intermediate passes, you take up on a lot of time, and I think that's what Detroit did very well in, and probably the best offensive coordinator in football as of right now in Ben Johnson. So the run game I also thought was pretty good too. I thought David Montgomery played a pretty nice, solid game, and Jahmyr Gibbs also had some big moments in here too. So I thought overall the Lions actually played a pretty nice game. I thought they had a really nice game plan to how to dethrone the Chiefs in Patrick Mahomes, and they took advantage of their missing pieces. Which, if you were to look at the Detroit Lions under the Matthew Stafford days and Matt Patricia days and everything in that sort of manner, this game wouldn't have been even close. The Chiefs would have, it probably would have been like a 45-42 type of game. The Chiefs would have ended up winning that, especially if you have Matt Patricia as your coach. Maybe Matthew Stafford would have kept them in the game, and maybe he could have found a way to beat them, but that defense was not going to contain the Chiefs to 20 points. That just wouldn't have happened 4, 5, 6, 7 years ago. But I was happy for the Lions. I was happy for Jared Goff. I was happy for the organization. And I thought this game really humbled Patrick Mahomes out a lot. I think Patrick Mahomes is going to learn from this experience. He knows he's not playing, the quote-unquote easy teams anymore, because no team is really easy to play in this league. And I think a lot of teams are starting to figure them out very quickly. And that's exactly what Detroit did. So I was very happy for the Lions. And I hope you guys have your winning ways for you Lions fans. I really do. I think you guys have a very good chance of winning the division for one. But I also think you guys can make a pretty decent run into the playoffs too. Maybe not quite a Super Bowl win. I don't think that's really in the cards just yet. I still think you have some more pieces to go in that manner, and I don't know if Dan Campbell can get you to a Super Bowl, but if you can win games like against the Chiefs, for example, you can compete with pretty much anybody in the NFL. So that's what I really liked about that game, and I'm happy that Detroit won that game. Next, we'll talk about, this is the game I watched on actually on Sunday with my girlfriend and her family. I watched this game because her mother's a Steelers fan and her brother-in-law is a 49ers fan, so I was able to watch this game, and that was the 49ers and the Steelers game. Now, I talked about it when I did my picks last week. I really thought this game would have been a lot closer. I have absolutely no idea what happened to the Steelers offense. The Steelers offense looked like a high school football team. They made a ton of mistakes. They just could not move the ball to save their lives. It was absolutely horrific. The offensive line was horrific. The run game was horrific. Kenny Pickett, horrific. And that's credit to the 49ers defense. Like, that's not taking away anything from the Niners defense at all. I thought that the Niners played phenomenal defense, and I thought Brock Purdy was pretty good. I'm not going to lie to you there. I thought Brock Purdy was pretty good in this particular game for a guy who got injured in the last game of the season in the NFC Championship. Didn't know if he was even going to start week one. And back in May, we thought we would have had to see either Trey Lance or Sam Darnold for that matter. So if either one of those two quarterbacks played, I don't think we would have seen 30 points on the board for the Niners. But the fact is that we did see that. And I thought Brock Purdy did a pretty nice job. I keep saying this and I will say it again. Brock Purdy is another version. He's a more mobilized version of Jimmy Garoppolo. And I think he's slightly better than Jimmy Garoppolo. I feel he wins a lot of big games, for one. But I also think he does a better job with making sure he gets outside of the pocket than Jimmy does. I think Jimmy struggled with that in San Fran, which was kind of one of the reasons why San Fran wanted to move on from him. Whereas Brock Purdy can make play action passes and can run outside of the pocket to make the big time throws. His arm isn't exactly the strongest. I would say the arm strength himself isn't exactly the strongest. But I also do think that the Niners did a nice job in the Kyle Shanahan way. He understands the quarterback. He understands how the game is played. He understands how to limit mistakes. And that's what I liked about Brock Purdy, is that he limits mistakes. He doesn't make a ton of mistakes, and he has a lot of help on that offensive line, and he has help in the weaponry department. So I thought Brock Purdy played a pretty nice game here for the most part. I feel like the Niners can compete with pretty much anybody in this league this year. I really do believe so, and I think not only to just do with this defense, but I think their offense can do a lot. I think they can run the ball well with Christian McCaffrey, who had a big game in this one. Brandon Ayuk was all over the place. I think he even scored 35 fantasy points in a lot of leagues, probably even more depending on how your scoring works. Brandon Ayuk was all over the place. George Kittle had a couple big plays, but not anything productive or anything that he really needed to. So he was more effective within the line and helped out more in that department. Debo Samuel helped out and was able to get the rushing game going too. But the passing game as well, like the short intermediate passes where Debo was good at, kind of helped out a little bit. But Brock Purdy did a lot of help on this offense. He kept the train moving and he kept everything going, and it was very smooth from beginning to end. There really was no stop motion. Maybe like one or two punts for the offense, but I thought Brock Purdy nearly had a perfect game. Maybe not exactly perfect. Maybe some errors here and there, and towards the second half was kind of where we're seeing a little bit of him getting erratic a little bit with having T.J. Watt once the defensive line got involved from Pittsburgh that was getting in his way. But most of the game, he kept his composure. He played pretty well, and I really think that this is a team that you have to really look out for when it comes to the NFC, department of things, and especially when you get into the playoffs, because I think they can compete with a lot of teams, and they could even just as well win the division too. I really think they have a pretty legitimate shot of winning the division if the Seattle Seahawks kind of take that downward fall, which we'll talk about them and their sad loss to the Rams. So I like what they're doing. I think this was a pretty nice, solid offensive game for San Francisco. I don't think anybody saw this actually happening. I thought it was going to be a lot closer and a lot more lower of a scoring of a game than it actually was, but it ended up proving me wrong, and it ended up being a blowout. So Kyle Shanahan outcoached Mike Tomlin. I mean, there's no really any other way to go around it. Then we go from one blowout to another. You talk about the Cleveland Browns and the Cincinnati Bengals. This game was being played in Cleveland. So I was kind of bouncing back and forth really either way because I was kind of getting bored from this Pittsburgh-San Francisco game. So I felt like this would be a perfect opportunity to be able to be able to catch up and see how this game was going, because it was tight for most of this game. Really going into halftime, I watched it. It was up. It was like 3-0. Deshaun Watson was going down the field there. He was making some throws to Elijah Moore, who I thought was pretty effective in the run game and did a pretty good job there too, and caught some pretty nice passes as well. Nick Chubb was a beast. The offensive line was phenomenal. Deshaun Watson played a pretty good game. I thought Deshaun Watson, not a top 10 quarterback type of game that you would want to see from Deshaun, and maybe that we could see later on this season. But I thought he played a nice enough game to where his defense was playing well, the offense was moving, he was limiting his mistakes. He wasn't making a lot of really pushing the ball down the field too much, except for one play that got intercepted. I have no idea where he was even throwing that ball to when the play first happened. And yeah, I mean, that was kind of an ugly interception there. I thought that was going to be the turning point for the Bengals. But no, I mean, Cleveland was in it. Well, Cleveland was on the ball. They were like one step ahead of the Bengals for pretty much the entire game, I would say. Kevin Stefanski came up with a good game plan. I mean, they ran the ball well. They took advantage of the middle of the field. They took advantage of what they were able to do, and they took advantage of the most important thing, and that was the Bengals losing two of their best safeties. So they struggled in that department. Now, the Bengals defense, on the other hand, was playing good up until about the second half. The second half, they started to fall apart, and that was because Joe Burrow and company just was not able to get anything going. Joe Burrow was so bad in this game, he couldn't even muster 100 yards. It was 14 for 31 and 82 yards. No touchdowns, no interceptions either way. And T. Higgins was absolutely shut down. 8 targets, did not catch a single pass. Jamar Chase was very limited too, although he did have a couple of moments where he looked like Jamar Chase, but nothing spectacular. And the offensive line is still a problem. They're still not playing very good, and maybe that was because it was a mismatch between them and Cleveland's defensive line. Like, I think Cleveland's defense has vastly improved from last year. So maybe that was kind of the mismatch right there that maybe a lot of us didn't really expect to see. Maybe it was something that nobody really thought about. But really, this game just wasn't very good for the Bengals. They just could not do anything to save their lives. Joe Burrow got sacked so many times. It looked like he got sacked for 1,000 times. Every single time I turned my head away, the play was already over because he got swallowed up by Myles Garrett and company. So they just could not play well at all. They just couldn't get anything started. They were fortunate enough to even have a field goal in this game, and if that interception did not happen, the game would have been so much worse, so much worse. So now, as far as the Bengals, they're one of the three top of the AFC teams. Them, the Bills, and the Chiefs that all lost. Do I have any concerns about the Bengals? No, I still think the Bengals are. I would think they're the top team in the AFC right now. After the way that we saw the Chiefs on Thursday night, and after what we saw from the Bills Monday night, I think that the Bengals have to be the top team in the AFC, and Cleveland not too far behind them either. I mean, you have all the talent in the world. You just did not have a great day. That really is what it comes down to. And Joe Burrow still kind of recovering from that calf injury, so I don't think he's exactly 100%. And this wasn't really the game of where he really should have been playing if he was still covering with that injury. So, but otherwise, really, honestly, it is what it is now. Not much you can really do about it. I kind of knew that this was going to be the factor. We knew last year that Cleveland was dominated against the Bengals in their first matchup. I believe that game was also in Cleveland. So we kind of knew what was going to happen in this game. We knew Cleveland was, we had a lot of questions about them, but we knew that they matched up very well against the Bengals and Joe Burrow, and they've always found ways to beat them every year. And that really seemed to be the case for this year too. So first matchup, first week, I'm not overly concerned about the Bengals. I still think they're very good. I think they'll find their way eventually, but it's going to take some time. I think they're going to take a lot more, a lot more discipline. I think they still need to fix up on the offensive line that has not shown me anything yet, and then Joe Burrow just has to come in here and play better. That's really what it comes down to, and they just got to call it a better game. Really, that's just all that really comes down to it. So, good win for the Browns. Good win for Deshaun Watson and Kevin Stefanski and everybody. And I think Cleveland's season is. I think they're going to start rolling in the right direction. I really do think they are a dark horse for this team for this year. And I think if the Jets, now losing Aaron Rodgers for the year, if they go down the way, if they can stay healthy and do that, I think they can take the Jets spot of being like a dark horse for the Super Bowl. I really do. I think they have all the right tools. They just need to make sure that the coaching is correct, so that way they can be able to do that. All right, next game we want to talk about here. Actually, I'm going to take a sip of my water real quick. If you haven't done so already, guys, please be sure to drop a like on this video and leave a comment down below and let me know what you guys are thinking so far about all of these games that I'm talking about. I went through 3 games so far, so let me know in the comments down below what you guys think. It's always good to get a refresher of water. Okay, so next game we're going to talk about is the Saints at the Tennessee Titans. Now, I did not get to watch this game full on. I didn't get to watch this game full on, and I watched the highlights of it, right? Actually, I was watching the highlights right before I was getting ready to do my live stream. And the game was pretty much exactly how I envisioned it. Neither team played very well. I'll give you that right there. The Titans' offense is a problem. I think we kind of knew that already, but they are a bigger problem than we thought, and not in a good way. DeAndre Hopkins, I understand he's in a new system. He's still trying to figure out the offense, but he really was not much help. I don't think he really did much better than they would have done without him. I really don't. And Ryan Tannehill throwing 3 interceptions, the offensive line being terrible. Derrick Henry had a decent game, though, at least. I say if there's anybody on offense that had a good game, at least, it was Derrick Henry. I thought he was solid. but didn't make the big moments when they needed to. And as far as the defense goes, they kept the Saints to, what was it, 3 field goals, something like that. And yeah, the defense could have also had a touchdown too. There was also controversy about the fumble on Derek Carr. Kevin Byard fumbled. No, excuse me. Derek Carr fumbled. Kevin Byard recovered it, and they were saying it was clear as day, and he ran it back for a touchdown. But the reviews, everybody said that it was an incomplete pass, and many people feel that it was a fumble. So I don't really know. I don't know what to really think about it, but to me it looked like it was a fumble and returned for a touchdown. I think the Titans got ripped off there. I really do. Not that I really think it would have. I don't know if they really would have. They probably could have won with that. I think they could have won with that. I think they could have won with their defense, but their offense wasn't doing enough to be able to get themselves going. Like, their offense was just so bad that they only mustered 5 field goals, and and for them to only lose by a point to the Saints, that's probably not really all that much better than them. And to only lose to them by a point, that just shows you how good the defense is, and it goes to show you how good Mike Vrabel is as a coach. I know a lot of people are going to kind of say that he's very overrated. He's not that great of a coach, and they're going to say all this sorts of other things, this, that, and the third. But if you didn't have Mike Vrabel as your coach, I think you would have gotten blown out easily by the Saints, and that's no exaggeration at all. So I think as a Titans, if you're a Titans fan, I think if you're an NFL fan, I think you would want to have someone like Mike Vrabel on your team, because even though this roster is not very talented outside of Derrick Henry and DeAndre Hopkins and Ryan Tannehill, a couple decent players, but nothing that really shines out to anybody. If you're telling me that you don't want Mike Vrabel to coach up your team, there's something wrong with you there. This guy does not have the superstars except for Derrick Henry, but he doesn't have multiple superstars on his team or the best roster in the National Football League, and he still finds ways to keep his teams in the game. And that's exactly what he did against the Saints. Now, like I said, the Saints aren't exactly a much better team than the Titans, but it's still, either way, it's still a nice win. I mean, you beating the Saints, that's not an easy win for anybody. I mean, ask Tom Brady. Tom Brady did it twice last year, but he didn't have a fun time doing it. So, looking over to the Saints offense, though, after I talked about the Titans, I think the Saints offense was kind of similar. But I thought Derek Carr played much, much, much better than Ryan Tannehill. I thought Ryan Tannehill didn't play very well at all. But Derek Carr, I thought, played better. I thought Derek Carr had a nice debut with the Saints. Now, maybe he didn't make like the most explosive plays, and maybe he made some mental errors. I know he threw an interception in the middle of the game. I think it was like right before half. I think he threw an interception. I understand all that, and he did make a couple of mistakes, but I thought in my personal opinion, I think Derek Carr is a lot happier now playing for this particular team instead of being in Vegas. I think this is a team that loves him. I think it's a team that respects him. He's got a pretty decent coaching staff, I think a good organization, and he's got a good fan base that is willing to have him, be their quarterback. So I thought he played a nice game, and you could just tell like the differences between what he played in this past week versus what we saw from last year. You can see that there's a definite difference between the quarterback. You can definitely see the difference between the two teams that he's played for in this game from yesterday. So, do I think the Saints are a good team? I think they're decent. I think they're solid. I wouldn't say they're great. I wouldn't say they're phenomenal, but they get the job done. I think they're the best team in the NFC South, and that's not a very good division. Maybe Atlanta's probably somewhere around there with them, and Carolina's not too far out. And then the Tampa Bay Bucks, they could be a lot better than what people think. I mean, this division's really up for grabs, but I still say the Saints probably will win the division. And I think it's because of someone like Derek Carr, who has a lot of experience with game-winning drives. As long as Dennis Allen can keep them in that, because I don't really know how good of a coach Dennis Allen is at this stage now that he has a more stabilized quarterback. All right, next game we've got here is the Raiders at the Broncos. So we're talking about Derek Carr's old team, the Las Vegas Raiders. So the Broncos still has many concerns with their offense. That's no question about it. And I think when you take a look at it, you understand that the offense is missing a ton of pieces. We understand that they're missing Jerry Jeudy, KJ Hamler, Tim Patrick. They're losing a bunch of different players. And so you have to turn to your tight ends. You have to turn to a bunch of other players, too, that you probably don't really get to see very often. So, or get to really work with very much, except for maybe Cortland Sutton's the only one. But I don't think Cortland Sutton's really that. I don't think he's that explosive number one guy that this team needs. So I thought the offense looked pretty similar to what we saw from last year. I think Sean Payton definitely is eating his comments now, what he said about Nathaniel Hackett. And I think it was very well deserved. I thought the Broncos needed to lose this game. Now, the Raiders, on the other hand, I thought their offense looked a lot more competent than last year. I think Derek Carr last year looked very lost and very uncomfortable being in that Josh McDaniels offense. And, if you're not part of if you weren't part of New England's offense, if you weren't part of that team or that dynasty that McDaniels has had with Belichick and Brady, chances are you're probably not going to really learn all that quickly. So then that was something that Derek Carr wasn't able to do. He just was not able to. He wasn't able to excel or improve from that offense. So it was a good move by the Raiders to release him and sign up somebody else, and they got Jimmy Garoppolo. So I thought the signing of Jimmy Garoppolo from earlier in the year, I had a lot of questions about it as the offseason went on, and just seeing what the kind of players they picked up and drafted. I thought at the end of the day, now looking back on it, I think this was a pretty good signing. Like, I know Josh McDaniels has worked with Jimmy Garoppolo before. He understands the offense and how it works. And I thought Jimmy Garoppolo played a lot better than what we saw from Derek Carr from last year. And maybe this is just only one game, and maybe he could fall flat on his face the rest of the way. But I thought he played a pretty good game here. I must say I was quite impressed with his short intermediate passes that we know that he does very well in. And Devontae Adams and him had some good connections a lot. But also what I really did notice too is that you can tell that, as Jimmy Garoppolo likes to throw the ball within the numbers. He's not really a quarterback that likes to throw to the sidelines. And Jacoby Myers is that slot receiver that he was for the Patriots last year. And for this year, he was able to, he's still the slot receiver. Jimmy Garoppolo trusts him and likes throwing inside the numbers, and that's what Jacoby Myers is good for. So I thought Jacoby Myers played a nice game in this, and he was a big factor to getting this offense moving. So the running game was a bit of a question mark for me. I thought the offensive line played decent. I thought they played good, but they didn't open up enough holes for Josh Jacobs. And when you have a good running back like that, and you know what you can do with him and utilize him in the passing game and for the rushing attack, you have to be able to open up some open field for him so that way he can run through defensive linemen and everything. So because you have a good enough offensive line that can do that. So that was really my concern about the Raiders. But other than that, though, I thought their offense looked pretty efficient. Like, there's not much else I really do need to say about this offense, except I thought they looked good. I didn't really get to see too much of what their defense was, so I still think their defense might be suspect, and I think to them to keep the game to 16 points, keeping the Broncos to 16 points is just kind of a fluke, because last year, we saw how much points the Raiders gave up. I believe they gave up 25 last year to the Broncos, and their average every single game seemed like they could only score like 16 points. So that seems to be the Broncos' favorite number of how to lose, is stopping at the number of 16. So I didn't think the offense really looked all that much better for the Broncos. I really didn't. I thought Russell Wilson still looked very shaky. He did throw a couple of touchdowns, but he didn't even muster 200 yards, which was a very unlikely Russell Wilson thing that would happen, that rarely ever happened in Seattle. The running game I thought was decent. I guess. Javonte Williams, I mean, coming off of an ACL surgery, still a bit of a question mark there. Like, how good was he? Is he really? And that sort of thing. Offensive line was good. I think their offensive line is, a lot better than what it was last year. And the defense played pretty good. I thought they played Jimmy Garoppolo good, and they kept him within. But I thought Jimmy Garoppolo did enough good things in this game that tricked up the defense for the Broncos, and were having a difficult time stopping the intermediate passes and the short passes. So, yeah, I mean, I still have some questions about the Broncos. And I also have to say, too, to be quite honest with you, like, I understand going for the onside kick. I am all for being aggressive for any football game that you play. But I don't understand why you had to go for an onside kick right there and then. That was my biggest thing, is that I don't know why you had to go for the onside kick that early. And maybe because they weren't really scared of Jimmy Garoppolo, I guess. I know Sean Payton has coached against him before, and he's always been successful with it. But I don't understand. I understand the aggressiveness, and I'm for that. But I think going for the onside kick in this early stage of the game to kind of kick off your season, I just don't think that was the right move, because you kind of gave up your your early points. So that was kind of a bit of a head scratcher. I don't really quite get why that happened, but that was a classic Sean Payton thing that he wanted to do. And it almost worked out to their favor until a flag came out. So, nice win for the Raiders. I think the Raiders, as far as competing in this division, in this AFC, I think they're going to do what they can. I really do. But I still have to see if they can compete with the teams like Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Joe Burrow. Like, I have to see if they can compete with those quarterbacks, and I don't think their defense is built for either and any of that. I just don't think so. And then the Broncos, I just have a lot of concerns about the Broncos. I just don't. I think it's going to be another disappointing year for the Broncos. Maybe having a couple more wins than last year, but they aren't going to be pretty wins. I'll just put that out there. So, congratulations, Raiders fans. You've got your bridge quarterback. Get to keep Josh McDaniels. He's a better coach than what people give him credit for. So, maybe I'll see something on Facebook or YouTube or whatever social media sites you guys are on this week and saying, like, now you want to keep McDaniels. He's the greatest coach of all time. So, moving on from that. I don't think Josh McDaniels is the greatest coach of all time, but I think he is a good Raiders coach. A lot better than what they've had in years past. Next, you got Tyreek Hill and the Miami Dolphins. This was the Tyreek Hill show against the Los Angeles Chargers. This game was a high-flying, back-and-forth battle between two of the fastest and most explosive offenses in the NFL. Tua Tagovailoa versus Justin Herbert. Brandon Staley versus Mike McDaniel. A defensive-minded coach, a supposed defensive-minded coach versus a offensive-minded coach of Mike McDaniel. So Brandon Staley, once again, did what Brandon Staley does. He blew this game into pieces. No going any other way about it. He absolutely blew this game for the Chargers. Absolutely blew it. No question. So both teams got into the 30s. It was high flying back and forth. The run game for the Chargers was excellent with Austin Eckler. Justin Herbert got some rushing yards in, and Joshua Kelly also had some pretty big moments there too. I thought both teams had a very difficult time stopping the run, which was something that I noticed, especially when you're looking at the Dolphins defense or Dolphins offense, like their run game with Raheem Mostert. The Chargers had a tough time stopping the run, which is something that the Chargers have had trouble stopping for the last couple of years. I just don't get the Chargers, man. Like, I just don't understand why they keep losing these games. And I think anybody that has a football mind understands that Brandon Staley is just not that guy anymore. I wanted to give him a chance from last year. I thought he deserved another chance, and I thought he could have been better. And Kellen Moore coming on board too isn't exactly helping that either. And I understand this is week 1, but your defense is buttloaded with talent. on the defensive line, the pass rush, the secondary players. Like, the defense should not give up 36 points to Tua in the Miami Dolphins. I'm just sorry. There's just no way. And when you have Tyreek Hill open all that time, there's no way that you should be doing that. If you understand Tyreek Hill, you understand he is the fastest receiver in the NFL. You understand that he probably is the best receiver in the NFL. Sorry, Justin Jefferson, but I think Tyreek Hill takes the cake in this one, especially when especially what he's with Miami. So, when you're single covering Tyreek Hill and you realize that your secondary players aren't going to be able to catch up for him, you got to do your double coverage. And that's not what the Chargers did at all. They kept Tyreek Hill wide open for a lot of plays. And they also just let him do whatever he wanted. And Tua took advantage of that. Like, if you watch Tua before Tyreek Hill got there versus what he is now, Tyreek Hill is the reason why Tua is a superstar. If this was not the case, Tua would be a very, very, very average quarterback. That's just me being completely honest. So, not having Tyreek, not having McDaniel, not having Jalen Waddle, Tua would be a very average to below average quarterback. So, he's very fortunate that he has two of the fastest wide receivers in the league, Tyreek Hill being that number one deep threat guy. So, yeah, that was to me, that just absolutely blew my mind. And Justin Herbert in that last drive, I could just tell that Justin Herbert has not played the same since his rookie year. And that's pretty sad for me to really say or hear, because I always like Justin Herbert and I want him to be able to succeed, and I want him to be able to have success with the Chargers and take the Chargers where they haven't been able to go in a very, very, very long time. But when you have a coaching staff like Brandon Staley, and then you're going to have Kellen Moore be there, who's supposed to be the offensive-minded genius for this team, to be the savior for Justin Herbert's career and this offense, you know what I mean? Like, if you're trying to do all that, you shouldn't give up that many points against the Dolphins. That should just not happen. It shouldn't happen at all. So, I feel bad for Justin Herbert, but I have to admit, though, this loss kind of was on him in that last drive, because he didn't make the big enough plays to be able to win the game, and he wasn't able to muster through with the touchdown in that last drive before the Dolphins came all the way back to score a touchdown of their own on that last drive. So Justin Herbert, I do blame some on, but I also blame most of it on coaching, because I thought Brandon Staley is a guy who is a fourth down guy that loves to go for it on fourth down. I would have imagined and I would have assumed that he would have gone for it right there. You're only up by a point. If you go for a field goal is no good enough, all the Dolphins would need is a touchdown, and they got Tyreek Hill waiting on the other side. You can't do that. You have to be able to go for it on fourth down. You have to put your trust in your quarterback and your offensive coordinator to call the right play. And even if they didn't convert on fourth down at that time, if Justin Herbert does not make a play and the Dolphins go all the way down the field and they score that touchdown, at least you could just say, at least you tried. But they didn't even try at that point. They didn't try to win that game. They literally handed this game to the Dolphins. And that, to me, for a team that wants to go to the Super Bowl, for a team that competes with Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen's or Joe Burrow or any of those quarterbacks, like a guy that is right there, and a guy that just got an extension over the summer, he should be able to play at a bigger stage. So we'll see what happens. I think this is Brandon Staley's last year. I would fire him the next game that he blows with a decent sized lead. I just think Brandon Staley needs to go. But I can't discredit. I'll go back to this game real quick. I can't discredit, though, with what the Dolphins did, though. I thought the Dolphins' offense and Tua were phenomenal. And that's all thanks to Tyreek Hill, because Tyreek Hill made that offense happen. All right, next game. We got a couple more games to talk about. We got this one, and I believe we have a few more left. Okay. So this next game we're going to talk about is the Patriots and Eagles game. So the Eagles offense, let's admit the weather was not the greatest for in a lot of places, and it wasn't very good at Foxborough. So you can use the weather as an excuse of why the Eagles did not play, but you got to give credit where credit is due, and nobody likes to give Bill Belichick any credit for anything that he does. Okay, the defense, I understand the offense gave up some turnovers. Mac Jones threw a pick six, and Zeke Elliott fumbled on his first catch of the game. So I understand all of that. I really do understand that the turnovers did not help. But think about it this way. If the Eagles did not not the Eagles, if the Patriots did not turn the ball over those two times, if they didn't throw that pick six and they would have just kept the Eagles in field goal range, because think about it, that was really, besides maybe the Jalen Hurts pass to Devontae Smith, that particular play right there, that would have been their only touchdown in this entire game, and the rest of it would have been field goals. So instead of it being a 25-20 game for the Eagles, the Patriots could have easily won this game without those turnovers, because the defense played a lot better than I was expecting them to, especially the way that the game started out. Like, I thought the defense was going to give up a lot of yardage to a running quarterback, which they typically don't do very well against. They don't play well against the Ravens or Russell Wilson for that matter, and they've never really been known for playing running quarterbacks very good on the defensive side of the ball. That's just a straight up fact. That's just the way I've seen things before. So I thought they were going to struggle a lot more than what they did, but I have to admit, they really did a good job with containing Jalen Hurts. They didn't make him have like the big plays. He forced him through a lot of questionable throws. They forced him to a lot of incompletions, and they did a good job with containing his running ability too, which is something that the Patriots normally struggle with in a running quarterback. It is when they get outside of the pocket and they scramble around to make a play. And Jalen Hurts was very limited to that. So the defense, I thought, played really well for the Patriots. Now, the defensive side for the Eagles also played very well too, because they also got their turnovers too. But they also started to slip though too in the second half of the game. So after that first quarter of the Patriots, you knew that they were going to probably start a little bit sloppy because the weather's not very good. You understand that you're playing the Eagles. You're playing a defensive line that is probably the best defensive line in the National Football League. And you have Darius Slay on the other side waiting for you. James Bradbury is right over there too. And you have a great defensive line too. So, and you understand how this game is going to be played. So you're going to make some mistakes, in which they did. They did make some mistakes here. But then you look at the second, third, and fourth quarters, and this offense, once they got themselves going, once they got themselves into a rhythm, the Patriots offense played much better under Bill O'Brien as their OC than what they did with Matt Patricia last year as an OC. And Matt Patricia is not an offensive guy. So you can tell there's a significant difference. Like last year, if this was last year, Matt Patricia was calling the plays, this game would not have been even close. They probably wouldn't even have scored a touchdown. Probably wouldn't even scored a field goal too. If they scored a field goal, they were lucky. But this game would have been a lot worse. A lot worse. And you have to admit that. So Bill O'Brien did a nice play calling scheme for Mac Jones. And Mac Jones looked a lot happier this year, this game on Sunday. He looked so much better. Maybe without that interception, if that interception didn't happen and that pick six didn't happen, could have been a completely different game. But I really enjoyed watching this game. I thought it was a good game for a couple reasons. One, because the Patriots are still there. And I think they probably can finish third and they can still go to the playoffs. And as crazy as that might sound, they could still make a run for the playoffs this year. And that defense can compete with pretty much anybody. And the offense can also get things clicking as well, too. And we know that this team can always compete no matter what. Like, even if they had the worst roster in the league, they can still compete because of how electrifying the defense is every single game. That's just straight up facts right there. So I don't know how the Patriots will match up on Sunday night when they go to play the Dolphins in their home stadium yet again. But I do think that the Dolphins will have a much more difficult time scoring on Bill Belichick. Even though Tua is undefeated against Bill Belichick and the Patriots, I still think they're going to struggle, especially if the game is being played in Foxborough, because that's not easy to play there. Just stating the facts here. So, and the Eagles play the Vikings. They should be able to win that game. So, overall, we learned a lot about this game. That was the one thing I liked about it, was how good the offense played for the Patriots. I thought they looked much better than last year. And I also like the fact that the Eagles can't say they ran away with this game anymore. So those are a couple reasons why I enjoyed this game. But I just wish the Patriots would have won. Next game here, I'm not going to spend too much time on it. Not really much to talk about here. But the Los Angeles Rams absolutely obliterated the Seattle Seahawks. So Cooper Kupp, who's on IR, he's going to be on IR for the next several weeks. He might return in week 5 or week 6, and I have him in fantasy somewhere. So as soon as he comes back, I'm starting him up right away. But yeah, the Rams, Matthew Stafford, I was watching highlights on it. They looked good. Like, I can't say that they were the better team, but they played much better than the Seahawks did, that's for sure. The Seahawks defense gave up way too many yardage, for one, and their offense just was not good enough at all. The offense was not good. Geno Smith only completing, throwing for 1 touchdown to DK Metcalf, and barely got over 100 yards of passing. So I was impressed with the way Matthew Stafford played. I thought Matthew Stafford played this game I thought he played like what we saw 2 years ago from the Rams. Now, I'm not saying this team is anywhere near that talent of the Rams. I don't think they're anywhere near the 2018 talent that they once had. But I think as long as Sean McVay is still there, Matthew Stafford, Cooper Kupp, as long as Cooper Kupp can stay healthy, Stafford can stay healthy, and Aaron Donald, and maybe a couple players that could step up, who knows? They could be a better team than what people think. They really could. But the Seahawks have a lot of things that they have to fix up on too, especially on the defensive side of the ball, because that's pretty bad if you give up 30 points to a team that is Cooper Kuppless. All right, next we got the Packers and the Bears. I didn't watch much of this game right here, but I will say this, though. The Packers still own the Bears, even without Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Jones, Jordan Love, no Christian Watson, no problem. Aaron Jones did a lot of it, and Jordan Love had 3 touchdowns that he threw to. Aaron Jones was being one of them, and Romeo Doubs caught 2 touchdowns, if I'm not mistaken. I think he did. I'll look that up real quick, but I believe he did. Because I know Romeo Doubs stepped up as the number 1 guy, and he did really well. And I hope this is also a wake-up call to any Bears fan who thought that the Bears were going to be a lot better this year. They acquired DJ Moore. Justin Fields was ready to go. But the fact of the matter is, we know he's not. we just know he's not good. We just know he's not that great of a passer. I mean, there's no other way to really go around that, guys. I mean, I'm sorry, Bears fans, but no other way to go around it. The Packers still own these 2 guys, even without Aaron Rodgers and the new Jordan Love era. The Packers still own you. All right, 2 more games left. The next one is the Giant Massacre. What a game this was. So I knew that the Giants weren't going to win this game. I did know that was just not going to be the case in any way. But I thought the Giants would have at least scored some points in this game. Like, I thought they would have scored at least a touchdown and 2 field goals at least, and I would have been satisfied with how they did in that department. But they couldn't even muster a field goal. That's how bad it was. I understand the weather was a big factor in that, and I think that probably could have been the case too. But man, what happened to this offense? Like, Daniel Jones, Saquon, Darren Waller, an overrated offensive line that was supposed to be better. Evan Neal overrated. Like, what happened? The offense just couldn't get anything going at all. And that's no discredit to the Cowboys defense at all. Like, it's not like that they made a couple mistakes. Like Daniel Jones throwing some boneheaded interceptions, which reverted back to what we saw in 2019, 2020, 2021. That was the Daniel Jones that we saw on Sunday Night Football. We didn't see the one from 2022. And as I've said before, as a Giants fan, I like to be optimistic. I like to give the Giants the benefit of the doubt. But there was no way that they were going to win this game. There was just no way they were going to win this game. In terms of maybe the weather being a factor, but just knowing how good this defense is for the Cowboys, there was no matching up that was going to really work out for this team very well. So, I kind of want to say I told you so, especially to all my Giant friends out there, including myself. Like, the Giants still need work. Like, coaching can get away with some things, and they can beat bad teams, but they are not ready to compete with teams like the Cowboys or the Eagles in their division. They're just not ready for it yet. So, and really, to be kind of honest with you, the Cowboys offense really didn't play much better, honestly. I don't think Dak Prescott, he didn't even throw for a touchdown. Instead, Tony Pollard rushed in for a couple of touchdowns in this game. They ran the ball. But what I did like about the Cowboys offense that I thought was something that they should have done a lot more of last year is that they got more players involved in both the passing game and the running game too. So, last year we knew Zeke and Tony Pollard were going to split some time together, and whoever was going to get the most carries and everything like that too. Zeke would usually be like the goal line stand for them, and Pollard would be like the one that would try to convert on like the big long runs. And this year with Pollard being that running back number one, it's tough because we just don't know if he's capable of being a running back number one on any team, really, even on this team. But he played a pretty good game. But I also like that they also got involved with Turpin, too. I thought Turpin also getting involved in the run game was also very helpful, too. And I also like that Dak Prescott had more weapons to throw to besides CeeDee Lamb. I thought Brandon Cooks had some pretty solid plays, and I thought Michael Gallup was kind of quiet, but got involved when he could. I'm not crazy for the tight end position, but I think the Cowboys, if as long as the defense can stay healthy and they play the way that they do, like the Cowboys I'm not a Cowboys fan. I'm not at all. But as long as the Cowboys can stay healthy, their defense can stay healthy, and Dak can play offense, the Cowboys could be a sleeping giant to go to the Super Bowl and be reminded as the 1985 Chicago Bears. Because the Chicago Bears won their Super Bowl by defense. So I feel the Cowboys can definitely compete for that. No question about it. I personally believe they actually could be better than the Eagles this year. They could outplay them this year. So that's how I feel about Dallas, and that's how I feel about the Giants right now. So this game wasn't even anywhere remotely close to what fans thought it was going to be, including myself. I knew they weren't going to win the Giants. I knew they weren't going to win the game, but I thought they would have at least stayed in the game and be in it, and they weren't even close with it. And, it goes to show you guys, like, Daniel Jones came back on earth. Like, we understand what the teams they played last year. Like, I get it. They played a cupcake schedule last year. They played the AFC South, and they beat all four of those teams. Not that impressive. They beat the Vikings in the wild card. The Vikings was probably the best offense they faced the entire year, but their defense was horrific at the second half of the year. So Guys, like, you can't say Daniel Jones is this great quarterback until he wins you the biggest game of his career. Like, we've had other good quarterbacks come in and out of this league before. Like, we've always known how Dak Prescott was. We've always known how good Kirk Cousins was, but they haven't won the big game yet. And Daniel Jones kind of falls into that category. And until Daniel Jones can do that, then maybe things will change for me in terms of what I think about Daniel Jones. But I don't think Daniel Jones is bad. I don't want Giants fans to think that I think he's horrific, because he's not horrific. He is a good quarterback. He is good. He's not great. He's not top 10. He's lucky if he even makes the top 20. But he has limitations that they need to work on with him. He has limitations to what he can do. But there are some good things that he can do. For example, dual threat quarterback. Can run outside of the pocket. He can make plays with his feet. He can play action passes. He's very mobile, which is something that the Giants have not seen before under when Eli Manning played for them. But he does not push the ball down the field very well. And they didn't ask him to last year. Brian Daboll understood the limitations that Jones had. He understood that he didn't have a lot of help as on the receiver end of things and had to rely on Saquon Barkley. So Brian Daboll understood what Daniel Jones was given. And he worked around an offense that was going to best fit him and for this team. So he didn't need to push the ball down the field last year because Brian Daboll figured that out. Now he's got some help. Paris Campbell, Darren Waller, who's supposed to be his number one guy. So there are ways that they can go around this. There are ways that they can improve from this. But fans have to understand what you're getting into with Daniel Jones. They have to understand that he is not elite. He's a good quarterback, but he is not elite. And we have to see if he can make plays down the field and win the big games. All right, and finally, we'll talk about this game, the Jets and Bills game. So, this game, I have to say, this was probably the only game that I actually watched fully from beginning to end. And I must say that the Bills are very overrated right now. I know they struggled to play against the Jets last year. I know Josh Allen threw a couple interceptions against them last year. And I believe he played Zach Wilson once, and he lost to him, and that was in MetLife. So the Bills are overrated right now, and I like the Bills, and I love Josh Allen. Like, Josh Allen is probably my favorite quarterback in the league. But on the other side of the token, though, I understand that the Bills' offense is just not impressive. Besides Stephon Diggs, who honestly was their best player in this game, their offense needs a lot of help, and their offensive line needs a lot of help. Josh Allen playing hero ball still. I'm not a big fan of Ken Dorsey as their offensive coordinator. I'm sorry, but I just don't like him as their coordinator, and I think he needs to go. I think this team needs to go back to a Brian Daboll-minded guy that's going to get Josh Allen back into the winning mentality and playing to the way that we know he is capable of playing. Because they're calling way too many passing plays. They're giving up way too many big plays. And they're making turnover decisions. Like Josh Allen threw 3 interceptions in this game that were boneheaded decisions, and that was trying to push the ball down the field. And not only was he trying to push the ball down the field, they were all in double coverage, or they were covered already. Stephon Diggs, he threw it to twice, and it was intercepted twice by Jordan Whitehead. And then the third time it was thrown to Jordan Whitehead, who was covering Gabe Davis. So I don't understand what Josh Allen was seeing. Like, I understand he wanted to make the big play, but he just could not get anything going for this offense. And that's how it was. And that big fumble too, that was deep in Jets territory. That's what won the Jets that game, was because of those turnovers. They had 4 turnovers this entire game, and they just couldn't move the ball down the field. And you're playing at that point, Aaron Rodgers, who only had like 4 plays in, and was already out of the game because he has a torn Achilles and he's out the rest of the season. I'm sorry, Jets fans. I really do feel bad for you in that department. But you're playing Zach Wilson, and you know Zach Wilson cannot score to save his life. And Josh Allen making all these boneheaded decisions with 3 interceptions and a fumble, that's not going to help you win this game, especially when you're playing a potential number 1 defense this year. Like, that just doesn't work that way. So the Bills have a lot of things they need to go over, and I'm sure when they watched film, today. I'm sure there was a lot of things that they nitpicked and absolutely destroyed Josh Allen on because he really lost the game for them. He really did. Now, let's talk about the Jets offense. Now, the Jets offense, I think they're going to need to restructure this offense to be more of a one-dimensional type of team. So they're going to, if they want to make themselves even the playoffs at this point, like, I think Super Bowl is out of the question now. I think any person, any football fanatic would tell you the same thing, that a Super Bowl is out of the question for this team. But if they want to even make the playoffs and still be like a competitor, I think they need to turn one-dimensional. And Breece Hall, for having 10 carries, over 120 yards, like, Breece Hall should have started in this game the entire time. Now, I drafted Breece Hall in fantasy this year. I was very concerned about him playing because I know he was coming off of his ACL surgery. We didn't really know how he was going to play. So I was a little concerned about how he played. But he outplayed Dalvin Cook by like a mile. 10 carries, 127 yards, no touchdowns, but you still had a pretty nice game and running over 100 yards with only 10 carries. Dalvin Cook, for example, had 13 carries for only 33 yards. That was it. And Breece Hall is the heart and soul of this run team. So there should be no question that Breece Hall should be carrying this run game and being the number 1 running back for this team. And I think you can win with Breece Hall. Like, remember when we watched the Jets last year and Zach Wilson came back? We know Zach Wilson has limitations. We understand that he's not the greatest thrower of the football. So a lot of times they had to rely on the ball to be given to Breece Hall to make a big play. So, and once he went down, we saw a drastic change within the offense for the Jets, and they just could not score anymore. So I think that was the reason why the Jets picked up Dalvin Cook, was because I think they were concerned that Breece Hall wouldn't be ready. But I think moving forward, especially the way that Breece Hall played last night, you would have to think that he should be the running back number 1 to get the whole thing started. So Breece Hall had a phenomenal game in this game. I thought he personally, to me, if I were to pick MVP for this particular game, or if I was going to give the game ball to somebody, a player from the Jets that won the game, not only would I have thought of the punt returner, but I definitely would have thought of Breece Hall as being like my guy, because he got the Jets to the vast majority of the field goal range and touchdown range. Like, he did a lot on this offense last night. A lot. So, and then also one thing too I do kind of want to mention. Actually, I'll mention it after. But then you go to overtime, you kick a field goal, it gets in, and the Jets are going to overtime. The Bills go on a 3 and out. They punt the ball away, which I will say this, I didn't call it to be like a punt return touchdown, but the way that the punt was, I knew that it just was not a very good punt. And the Jets were somehow, I just had that strange feeling that the Jets were going to come back and find a way to make it into field goal range and win the game. And they didn't even need to do that because the guy ran it all the way back. Gibson, I believe his name was, ran the ball all the way back for a punt return touchdown, and ended up being the winner. So that was definitely a heartbreaking loss too for the Bills in that fashion. So the Bills' special teams definitely gave up on that one, no question about it. I know there was also a bit of question. I know Joe Buck and Troy Aikman said that there should have been a penalty call that should have been called on with tripping. I personally agree with that. I think they should have called that back, but I think they were in deep enough range where if they would have ran the ball out a little bit, give the ball to Brees Hall, who's been already playing phenomenal at that time, could have just kicked the field goal, try to get a little bit closer and win the game. So I feel like no matter what would have happened, whether they would have called the play, called the make the call of the penalty or not, I feel like the Jets still would have won this game either way because I think that would have been rightfully so because the Bills deserved to lose this game. Josh Allen lost it for them, and we'll just have to wait and see what they do in week 2. I think it's going to be it's a long season. And some of these teams I'm not panicking about really as of yet, especially the Bengals. I wouldn't really say that they're going to lose every other game the rest of the way. I just think they need some more time to adjust and develop themselves into the winning mentality. So that's how I feel about that. So congratulations, Jets fans, but also at the same time, I'm also sorry that you don't have Aaron Rodgers anymore. Hopefully that will, hopefully next year you'll get him back and hopefully he'll be healthy and maybe next year will be your year. I'm definitely not going to count you guys out. I am definitely going to try to root for you guys each and every week, but it's also very hard to root for Zach Wilson, though, especially knowing how he played last year. So the one thing I did want to mention about this game, even about the Giants too. So we know that this game was played at MetLife. We know Giants was played on Sunday night, and the Bills and Jets were played on Monday night. So both of these games were both in MetLife back-to-back nights. So why was these two games played back-to-back nights? I don't know. I thought that was kind of very odd that they did it that way. And I think looking back on it now and talking to a couple of people, one of my coworkers that I work with, who's also an avid football follower, and she also plays football, also said the same thing. She mentioned to me too about, with the turf being not really being refurbished and, coming off of a game and everything, it's very strange on how the NFL scheduled the Giants and the Jets in back-to-back primetime games at MetLife. So I think the turf could have done something about Aaron Rodgers. I mean, we do understand that MetLife is not the greatest of turf fields of all time. We understand that completely. So I think that does have a lot to do with it. But I also do think, though, too, that Aaron Rodgers looked very uncomfortable with being in this offense. Like, to me, before he even got hurt and even watching, like, the 4 plays that he was in, to me, he didn't seem right. So I feel like he was kind of, I don't know if it was because he was hurting or what the matter of the story was, or maybe he just wasn't used to this much pressure because the Jets' offensive line is garbage. Like the Bills' offensive line is garbage. So maybe he felt that pressure early on is why he looked so skittish. But something definitely was not right in that game. There definitely was not something right in that game with Aaron Rodgers. I just kind of wanted to make that statement known. So, other games that were played this weekend that I didn't really get a chance to watch, and I'm not really going to go too much in detail into because I didn't get a chance to watch the highlight reels for them. But we know that the Ravens and the Texans, that was a tight game for a bit. Ravens won that one 25-9. Buccaneers, Vikings in Minnesota, 20-17. The Bucs found a way to win that game. Not really much of a shock there. The Falcons and the Panthers, I kind of figured the Falcons were the more ready team. Won that one 24-10. Cardinals and Commanders. The Commanders actually barely won that game and really didn't play all that great at all. So they won that game. And then the Jaguars beat the Colts. That really wasn't a big shocker because the Colts are not a great team this year. But Anthony Richardson looked good, though, from what they say. So, and with all that being said, everybody, that concludes my Week 1 recap for the 2023 NFL season. Again, let me know in the comments down below what you guys think. Tomorrow, I will be on live for my Week 2 NFL picks. And we'll go over each and every game. I'll give you my picks, and we'll be good with that. So, this is JP Football Fanatics telling you one more time to please be sure to drop a like on this video if you have not done so already. Be sure to also leave a comment down below and hit that subscribe button for more NFL content. This is your boy JP Football Fanatic saying thank you so much, and we'll see you all next time.